Well, we've got updates on the nationwide riots in America. I guess there were really four places to focus on last night. You've got, of course, Kenosha, Portland, but then you also had Seattle and Minneapolis heating up. I guess we'll start with the updates on the story from yesterday with the alleged Boog Boy who had shot some rioters. Well, apparently, and some commenters actually jumped on this very quickly when I put that up, he was not a Boog Boy. I had not seen that evidence at the time. I had not seen his social media profiles. But after, a couple hours or so, I started to see it popping up, and I saw all the evidence. He was a police cadet, all this stuff, so very clearly not a Boog Boy, but that does not, of course, his ideology being different does not make his actions more or less justified. Now, it turns out that he was one of these Blue Lives Matter types who kind of make me cringe, which, that was actually kind of my complaint with all of the right-wing counter-protest to the BLM stuff is, the only counter we really saw to BLM so far has been to Black Lives Matter has been the Blue Lives Matter stuff, which, I have no real interest in getting involved with. And so at first I was just happy to see someone who I thought agreed with me, taking on these rioters. Well, it turns out he wasn't, not only was he not doing that, it also seems he wasn't defending private property, which is actually good, kind of good for him, because I think that it'll be much easier based on the videos I've seen. There is one compilation that was put out by Ian Miles Chungus, well-known internet provocateur, but it is a very good compilation of a bunch of different camera angles of people who were recording the scene when he shot the first guy at that car lot. And this pretty much exonerates the kid because it shows that he was under attack. There were two guys chasing him through that car lot. He turns around and one of the guys comes right up to him and he shoots him in the face. Although he didn't hit him in the face, I think he hit him like in the temple. But anyway, you can see the guy comes right up to him. You hear a bang, and then the guy falls on the ground. So you try and attack someone with a gun, you're going to get shot, and that's very clearly self-defense. The kid was running away. You could see that, and then they catch up to him. And then when they catch up to him, he shoots him. Just this one guy. The other guy, I guess, fled. And so then this kid, of course, we saw the other video, which was already out yesterday, where he runs away and two more people attack him. So clearly not a murderer. We don't know why those two men initially were trying to attack him. Maybe it was because he told them to stop beating on cars. I don't know. But either way, if they're trying to get this kid on murder, I don't think that's going to hold up unless you've got a really, really ideologically biased jury. This just seems like another case, like with George Zimmerman, where the left in America desperately wanted this guy to be a murderer, and he was just defending himself. You don't have to like George Zimmerman. I don't. I think he's a jerk. In everything that he said since that whole case. He does not present himself well in public, but that doesn't make him a murderer. That just makes him a jerk. He was all bloodied up afterwards because he was attacked by Trayvon. Well, in the same case here, you can see. I mean, and that's great about the age of where technology is so cheap that everyone is, recording everything, is that even though this kid wasn't wearing a body cam, we now have evidence that he was running away, tried to escape, and then when he was chased down by these people, he had to defend himself. Cut and dry. And thankfully, Tucker Carlson took the correct position on this, which I expected him to, but it's very big to have someone on television, who has that kind of legitimacy to come out and, have the right perspective on this, which is, hey, as long as the police are not going to protect the streets of America, how long did they expect the cops or how long did they expect ordinary Americans to just sit by and let their cities burn? How long did the cops think ordinary people would go before they stood up against this? Which is almost exactly what I wrote for the description of yesterday's video. I mean, this is a very obvious, escalation that was going to come at some point. Now, yesterday, I thought that there were going to be two results of the events of the prior night, of these events that I'm talking about, of this shooting. I thought either things were going to get much, much worse because people were going to be angry and want to go out and get revenge on both sides. You would think that there would be more right-wingers emboldened to go out with guns, and there would be more left-wingers emboldened to go out and riot. But then I said, hey, let's take the example of what happened in South Africa, and I detailed a somewhat analogous case in which very publicly on, I believe, live television, three Afrikaners from the AWB were gunned down in Botswana. And that's generally considered as a moment in South Africa that a lot of the Afrikaners who were thinking of fighting to stop the total, rise of the Rainbow Nation experiment, which that's a whole series of videos there to talk about South Africa since 1994. But there was a movement to try and prevent that, to try and maybe create some kind of an Afrikaner homeland to separate from the rest of South Africa as apartheid was being shut down. And after a lot of people saw those three dead guys laying in the road, they decided it just wasn't worth it, and it lost a lot of popular support. And so what I gathered from that is that, well, if you apply that same sort of idea to this situation, I would say, well, maybe this escalation might actually de-escalate the situation, because people would see it on TV, they would get scared, and they would think, gee, I don't want any part of this. I don't want to kill people, and I don't want to be killed. And so I said it's also possible that things calmed down last night. And apparently, assuming that, this isn't just being totally covered up by the media, it would seem that at least in Kenosha, things did calm down. I checked, all the Twitter feeds that I normally do, because of course the mainstream media said last night was very peaceful because there were no Boogaloo Boys. So no armed militiamen came out. So last night was very peaceful. So I thought, okay, well, of course CNN is going to say that. CNN is the same folks who just said fiery but peaceful. So I made sure to check, what was the three I checked? Andy Ngo, Elijah Schaefer, and Kitty Shackelford. The three of them seemed to focus on other cities that weren't Kenosha. So I don't know how much damage. I mean, I imagine there was some damage, but my point is that if there was this major escalation last night, which was one of my two scenarios, I think that we would know that by now. It would seem to me, based on the fact that I can't find much about what happened in Kenosha last night, that things probably de-escalated relative to the night before, that there was probably less violence. That's not to say that these were all peaceful protesters. I don't know, because I haven't seen the footage. I'm sure you can find plenty of images still of people smashing windows and things. But, I'm not seeing as much as we were the last 3 days. Now, Portland, however, is still burning. Night 92, I believe, was last night. That's not going to end anytime soon. They went after the ICE facility, and it's quite interesting. Trump stormtroopers had to come out again to disperse some of these Portland rioters. So that's going on. And then, of course, in Seattle, you've got all their continuing unrest there, kind of a sister riot to Portland. There was that incident not too long ago where they were trying to burn down, I can't remember if it was the police or the sheriffs, but one of their buildings they were trying to burn down, and they were pouring quick-drying concrete around the doors to lock them in. Pretty heinous crimes. But to me, the real interesting story was last night in Minneapolis. Now, there was another riot in Minneapolis over the shooting of a black man, and you would think, wow, another racial incident so soon after the last one? Well, it turns out this was a total hoax. There was not a black man shot by police in Minneapolis yesterday. This man apparently shot himself, and then, there were some police around, so they quickly, ran up to check on him. And so all these people saw was, oh my gosh, there's a guy dead on the ground, and there's cops next to him. These cops murdered this guy. Even though somehow we have it on video of him shooting himself. I don't know who was taking the video, but I mean, I guess it's a good thing that people are always recording things, because now we have evidence for everything. If there was no video of this, then people would just say that the cops shot this guy, and that when it was ruled a suicide, they would say, oh my gosh, that's nonsense, they're lying, the cops are covering up their murder. But nobody cares, so they rioted anyway, because again, this has nothing to do with the cops shooting black people. That is just an excuse. There is all of this built-up anger and resentment in this country anyway. Now, an interesting thing that Unicorn Riot put out was an interview that they did on their live stream, which Unicorn Riot's a left-wing organization based in Minneapolis, so they've had pretty good coverage of these riots from the beginning since George Floyd was shot, and they interviewed a couple of Boog boys about what they were doing and what happened the night before in Kenosha, and they were very quick to disavow this 17-year-old kid. They said, oh my god, he's a police cadet, he's posting all this Blue Lives Matter stuff, he's not one of us, which definitely, I mean, I would agree with them after seeing the kid's Facebook page. Yeah, it just seems like a normal Republican type of kid. But I think that these Boog boys were probably harder on the kid than I think was fair, because they were essentially saying, like, yeah, he's just like a cop. He was out there to just to kill people or whatever. And, the video speaks for itself. It's self-defense. If you're getting chased and somebody catches up to you and you got a gun, you're going to fire it at them because you don't want to get killed. I think it's impressive, actually, that the kid was able to handle himself that well and get away, that somebody wasn't able to disarm him, because he waited until these people were right on top of him. And when somebody's right on top of you, if you're using a rifle, you're at a disadvantage. The advantage of having a gun, or especially a long gun, is that you can hit somebody from further away. But if they're right on top of you, blunt instruments or knives or some kind of melee weapon tends to be more effective. But anyway, these Boog boys were out in actually, I believe they were from the Mujahideen, which I love that name, and they were saying, hey, if any of the cops start messing with these folks, we're going to stand up for them. Now, I don't know exactly what they mean by that, because I haven't seen any Boog boys try to stop arrests. Perhaps they mean if there is, legitimate police brutality, they'll step in. But I'm not entirely sure, what they really have planned. Because, again, when you see all this rioting going on, I mean, I would understand it if these people actually were peacefully marching, and the cops had the fire hoses out, and the dogs, like it was the 1960s again. You could understand why the Boog boys would feel like they had to step up to protect them. Actually kind of like what was going on with the Yellow Vests in France. Even though the Yellow Vests weren't entirely peaceful either, there were still a lot of peaceful Yellow Vests that got hit with the water cannon. And so you could understand why someone would think, hey, we have to stand up against these overbearing police. But I just haven't seen the police use excessive force in any of these riots anywhere. It's been quite the opposite. The police defend their quarters, they defend government buildings, and they let everything else burn. So I think that's about all I have to say on this topic. I'm tempted to talk about the Fed and what they just announced, but I guess maybe I'll save that for tomorrow and do a broader economic... Well, gosh, I almost want to do a second video today. I guess we'll have to see about that. If you get anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.